Yeah, we can try again if you'd like.
Yeah, it sounds much better now, so go for it.
So let me try this again. Hi, everyone. I'm Addie Wagenknecht. I'm the Director of Ecosystems and Technical Ops for the Algorand Foundation. And I've been in the crypto scene for quite a while. And I wanted to kind of give you guys a quick overview of crypto. But first, thank Kathy again for the second time for inviting me and for all the groundbreaking research that I believe that is going to happen and that I get the privilege of witnessing. So I want to start off really quickly by giving everyone sort of an overview of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I heard earlier that someone was hoping for that definition, so I'm here to provide it. I think a lot of times when people think cryptocurrency or about cryptocurrency or blockchain, they assume you work with Bitcoin. And that's sort of always been, in my experience, the default response when people say, well, what do you do? And I say, I work in crypto. And they say, what's crypto? And I'll say, well, do you know blockchain? And they'll say, oh, you mean like Bitcoin? So without even realizing it, there are hundreds of other viable chains with values locked in. And I want to point that out as something that is considered a niche field with internet nerds. The current market cap for cryptocurrencies that I just Googled and looked up, for example, was in October, it was approximately $2 trillion US. And by November 6th, just a few days ago, it was up to almost $3 trillion. So that's a $1 trillion increase, putting the valuation of cryptocurrency over companies like Tesla, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and way, way over Facebook. So if we want to sort of quantify crypto in terms of market value, I like to contextualize it in spaces that people are more familiar to give them the sense of sort of the vastness and expansiveness of where we're going and how rapidly it's growing. And so obviously I'm comparing that to traditional finance. But more importantly, I want to attempt to give you guys a 60-second lesson in blockchain consensus mechanisms, which is really sort of one of the most important things that you need to understand in order to start utilizing cryptocurrencies, start evaluating them for use cases and applications, and sort of why you might go to one versus the other. So a consensus really just a scary word for any number of methodologies that is used to achieve an agreement or a security across a decentralized ledger, or AKA a blockchain. So you can think about this in sort of how people or computers come to agreement, which is essentially how a blockchain lives and grows. So in the context of blockchains, there's two primary sort of consensus mechanisms, which you're going to hear all the time. One is proof of work, which is like ETH, Bitcoin. The other is proof of stake, and that's something like Polkadot, Cardano, Solana, Algorand to some extent. These are the most two kind of prevalent consensus mechanisms, which you'll hear about and are the best known examples. So in short, the criticism around proof of work is essentially that the critics of proof of work mining specifically is how, and mining is how the blockchain creates more blocks, and more blocks means a more healthy, centralized, robust chain. So with proof of work, it's an overly energy intense propagation, in which I think has created a lot of consensus and maybe consensus is the wrong word, a lot of issues and concerns around the sustainability and scalability of the chain, where I like to think of proof of stake as sort of blockchain version 2.0, in the sense that it tends to be more scalable, it's more sustainable in terms of energy consumption and all sorts of things. And sort of comparing those two, I think, is interesting across the gauntlet of use cases. But I wanted to kind of clarify that point really quickly before I get into other things. I also want to cover Algorand, which obviously I'm here to represent, and I've been working with and had the privilege to work at in the last year and a half. We are a pure proof of stake blockchain, which I'll explain in a second. But I like to think of Algorand as sort of a smart contract focused platform, decentralized with better transaction speeds, and where the Bitcoin and the Ethereum depends on miners to add blocks. That can be not only time intensive, but power intensive. So for example, when you deploy, this morning when I tried to deploy something on ETH, it took about 3 minutes for that kind of transaction to be validated on the chain. And with Algorand, it's less than a half a second. So it's very different in terms of use cases, in terms of a user experience, and also a developer experience, and cost is just another aspect of that. But most cryptocurrencies present users with a choice. You essentially have the performance, which is proof of stake, or you have decentralization, which is typically what people consider Bitcoin and Ethereum to be like the kind of golden examples of. However, I would argue that Algorand represents an opportunity to sort of transcend this paradigm, because we are the first fast layer one, which you can basically coordinate between billions of people across the world. So you could send $100 from myself here to someone in Singapore, to someone in Hong Kong, back to the US, and it's much more instant finality, where with Ethereum or Bitcoin, you're looking at 5 to 10 minutes for me to send that to Singapore. So if you look at that from like a scalabilization standpoint, the less than 5-second finality is without sacrificing that decentralization. And it means that, more importantly, for people like us, or for like me as an American, it can't be treated as security, which has all sort of legislative problems. And in a financial complexity, I think that allows you to kind of operate outside of this silo. So in addition to solving the blockchain trilemma comprising other networks, Algorand has been alive for 2 years with no downtime. And a series of cryptographic and political breakthroughs, I think, can create a new system of self-governance and evolution, unlike any other level 1 or layer 1 blockchain for that matter. So I really liked Kathy's example of, I think, the candle and how we think about electricity, and sort of viewing the blockchain as where we are now is sort of this initial entry point to sort of the early web, is like what I would like to compare it for in terms of like aging and dating myself, is that we're in this early stage where we're seeing the very initial use cases of blockchain, but we're not necessarily aware even yet of like the extensive potential, because we're just at the early precipice. One other thing about Algorand is that we were established by Silvio Micali. For those of you in academia might know that he co-invented primitives like the verifiable random function and the zero knowledge proofs. So these inventions do not only just underpin Algorand, but they actually underpin the majority of cryptocurrencies and one of the hardest problems in terms of distributed systems across blockchains. So it's really building technology from the basis and the tools in which every other technology is built. And we have essentially the kind of OG of that build out on Algorand, working with Algorand. So Algorand is also super fast. As I said, we have a lot of transaction speeds, and I think we're one of the lowest transaction space blockchains in the networks that are out there right now. I want to just show you really quickly like a quick overview for the visualization of sort of how I would like to summarize that, so you can see the different types of consensus mechanisms, and you can kind of see essentially the way that people tend to evaluate blockchains. And then real quickly, I just want to show you the energy consumption footprint, so you get sort of a sense of what that looks like when you're using something like Ethereum versus other blockchains. And then real quickly, I then want to go into use cases, because I think use cases are actually much more important than everything else. So I think at this point, everyone's like, what did you just say? What just happened to me? And I find the real world use cases, I think, to be more applicable in terms of case studies and understanding what it is that makes blockchain interesting. And that's ultimately the community and the people that are using it. Because technology is like pretty easy to solve relative to the complexities of society and sort of those applications. So in my last minute or two, I want to speak really quickly to sort of those use cases. So Gaia chains are really one of my favorite use cases, I think. They essentially are building out a digital ledger technology which allows biodiversity conservation and ecosystem restoration. They're working together with the IUCN, I believe, developing something called the FLR chain, which is a blockchain-based application for implementation across landscapes and working with deforestation. They're working specifically with farmers. So right now they've deployed in Uganda and Rwanda, which allows them to distribute, track, and earn funds in a way that minimizes the costs and maximizes the impact. So specifically, the FLR chain will allow investors and farmers to efficiently send money to environmental conservation groups and farmers, which will allow them to work directly with Gaia Chain and the IUCN in a way that fiat wouldn't be possible because of the high transaction fees, to send funds not only to each other, but allows for coordination across vast regions. So it's all smartphone dependent. And what they found in Uganda and Rwanda specifically within those use cases working with those farmers was that everyone had a cell phone. So the parameters of working within blockchain made immediate sense because they were able to work within the parameters of building out for people's smartphones. And then because those smartphones worked largely with data, obviously submitted by the farmers, they were able to basically organize at a field level and develop a core monitoring system. It also, I believe, helps kind of ensure inclusion of women, youth, and marginalized people because the implementation included training sessions and consultations that were specific to female farmers and youth, and specifically studying the ways in which that they could benefit monetarily from the active participation and the initial rollout. And then in addition to that, training other farmers and so on and so forth. The other thing I want to touch on really quickly is climate trade. That's another one that I am really keen and interested on. They are a company that allows other companies to basically offset their carbon emissions to a large number of verified environmental projects. So they're using Algorand as the primary infrastructure layer and leveraging its capabilities for carbon offsetting. When I last checked, we had about 300 registered companies with about 200,000 end users and 1 million tons of carbon offset on the first year alone, with about 50 projects available from 20 different countries worldwide. So I'm running already way over time. This is a quick slide of something I wanted to touch on, NFTs, which I'm happy to talk about at a later date. That can be its own lecture in and of itself. The final project that I'm really excited about was the African Blockchain Project, which we launched a few weeks ago. It's a core research team based out of Rwanda that's doing research around the misconceptions and the onboarding of blockchain across Africa. And so they've been doing really advanced analytical reporting based off of companies, individuals, and government institutions, and how they can work to harvest and gain mainstream adoption of blockchain across places like Nigeria, Africa, Kenya, and Kenya. So that is literally like a 30-minute project presentation that I just tried to cut down to 10 minutes, and I hope any of that made sense. And I would like to include really quickly my email and social media / Telegram handles here. I'm happy to speak with any of you about non-diluted funding and research opportunities that we have at Algorand, as well as any sort of use cases or specific sort of deployments you're interested in doing on chain. And NFTs as well, I'm always happy to jump on a call about. So feel free to reach out to me on any social media channel or directly on email, and we can set up a time to talk. So thank you so much again, Kathy, for the opportunity to speak today. And I'm really looking forward to the future of the lab.